Why is it that the ones who care less get more? Why do women chase the ones who barely call, barely commit, barely show vulnerability? Why does detachment seem to be more attractive than devotion? These are not questions of love. These are questions of power. Think of this. A man walks into a room, doesn't look around, doesn't seek approval, doesn't try to impress. He just exists, calm, still, and unmoved. He speaks less. He listens with steady eyes. And yet, somehow, he becomes the center of attention. Not because he chases, but because he doesn't. Not because he's loud, but because he's unshakably silent. This is not mystery. This is control. In today's world, we've misunderstood what women are drawn to. It's not the recklessness of a so-called bad boy, but the feeling that he cannot be shaken. He doesn't need their validation. That's not cruelty. It's clarity. Now ask yourself this. When was the last time you acted from stillness, not emotion? When did you last observe rather than react? In our daily lives, we spend so much time trying to prove we're worthy, loved, respected. But the ones who win aren't the ones who scream the loudest. They are the ones who can stand in fire and not flinch. Welcome to Book Boost, where we don't just talk, we transform. If you're tired of being overlooked, tired of being controlled by your own emotions, then stay. Because this isn't about getting attention. It's about becoming unshakable. Like, comment, share, and subscribe if you're ready to rebuild yourself from the inside out. Please drop down your one thought on believe in yourself in the comments. Let's grow together. Your words may change someone's life. This isn't about being bad. It's about being disciplined. And discipline, as the Stoics teach, is not to look strong, it's to be strong. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The truth is, most people live by emotion. The bad boy lives by instinct. But the Stoic? He lives by reason. And reason never goes out of style. The Stoic edge, why inner stillness is more alluring than chaos. They say confidence is attractive. But what kind of confidence are we really talking about? Is it the loud, flashy kind? The one that needs a room's attention to survive? Or is it the quiet kind that stands calm even in the middle of noise and chaos? One fades the moment no one's watching. The other? It grows even stronger in silence. This is the kind that women notice without effort. The one that doesn't need to chase. The one that doesn't need to talk too much. It's the kind that holds power without showing off. And that kind of presence doesn't come from being bad. It comes from being disciplined. You see, the world today rewards drama. Social media, movies, songs, they tell you to be loud, unpredictable, mysterious. They say that's what makes people want you. But that's surface-level attraction. It might work for a moment, but it never lasts. Why? Because it's not real. People eventually see through the act. But what they can't ignore is peace. Deep, unmoving peace. The kind that doesn't depend on what others say or think. That's the true edge. That's the Stoic edge. When a man walks into a room with inner stillness, people feel it, even if they can't explain why. He doesn't fidget. He doesn't chase attention. He doesn't rush to speak. He controls his emotions, not because he's cold, but because he knows emotion can be dangerous when left unchecked. He's not trying to prove anything. And that's exactly why he becomes so powerful. A woman can sense when a man has control over himself. Not control in the fake way. Not the kind that hides weakness under anger or arrogance. But true control. The kind that doesn't need to react when provoked. The kind that listens without judging. The kind that walks away when needed, not out of fear, but out of strength. That's not something you can fake. That's something you build. Slowly. Daily. And this is where Stoicism separates itself from the idea of the bad boy. The bad boy is reactive. He's impulsive. He's reckless. He may appear confident, but deep down, he's a slave to his emotions. He does what he feels. He speaks what he thinks, without pause. That may look powerful, but in reality, it's weakness in disguise. A man who can't control his temper is already defeated. A man who needs attention to feel alive is already empty. Now compare that to a Stoic man. A man who doesn't need to be loud. Who doesn't need to prove he's right. Who doesn't feel the need to argue. Because he knows who he is. He's not led by pride or fear. He responds to life, not out of emotion, but out of understanding. That kind of man becomes rare. And anything rare, naturally, becomes desirable. This attraction has nothing to do with manipulation. It has everything to do with presence. When you are fully present, not anxious about the past, not obsessed about the future, but rooted in the now, you become powerful. That presence is what women feel. It's what makes others feel safe around you. Calm, steady, unshaken. Seneca once said, "A man is as unhappy as he has convinced himself he is." Think about that. Most people are constantly convincing themselves they are not enough, not attractive enough, not successful enough. And so they live in a cycle of proving. But what if you stopped proving and started being? What if you let go of the need to perform and instead chose to control your inner world, your mind, your reactions, your habits? You wouldn't need to chase anyone. People would come closer naturally. Because peace is magnetic. Discipline is rare. In a world full of emotional noise, the one who speaks calmly, acts wisely, and stays balanced becomes unforgettable. A Stoic man isn't stone-hearted. He's not cold or distant. He feels, but he doesn't let feelings control his actions. He cares, but he knows when to let go. He's compassionate, but not weak. He listens, but doesn't absorb nonsense. He leads his emotions, he doesn't follow them. And that kind of power is eternal. So many chase attention and approval. But that's a race that never ends. Today you win it. Tomorrow someone else does. But self-control, inner peace, those are victories no one can take away from you. Women may be drawn to the bad boy at first, but the man they stay for, trust, and respect is the one who is consistent, calm, focused. Epictetus taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you want. It comes from having the strength to not do what harms you. It comes from the power to pause before reacting, to observe before judging, to choose your response rather than being owned by your mood. This is what Stoicism teaches. And this is what creates true attraction, not just in relationships, but in all of life. Being attractive is not about charm. It's about character. The bad boy often uses charm like a mask. But a Stoic man doesn't wear masks. He doesn't need to. His strength lies in what you don't see, his self-discipline, his quiet courage, his patience. While others are shouting to be seen, he's quietly building a fortress within. To master yourself is the most dangerous power you can possess. Not because it hurts others, but because it frees you from needing anything from them. And freedom is beautiful. Freedom is strong. And freedom is attractive. We're not here to become the next bad boy. We're here to become something much greater. Men who carry themselves with quiet honor. Men who don't depend on chaos to feel powerful. Men who don't act out of insecurity. But men who live with reason, purpose, and unshakable peace. That, my friend, is the edge. The true edge. And it doesn't fade. It doesn't break. And once you build it within you, no one can take it away. False confidence versus Stoic fortitude. The quiet force women sense. There is a difference between being loud and being strong. One fills the room with noise. The other fills it with presence. Most people today can't tell the difference. And that's exactly why many fall for what they think is confidence, when in truth, it's only a mask worn by someone who's afraid of being seen as weak. You've seen it. The man who walks with his chest puffed, who speaks over others, who constantly needs to prove his worth. He flirts with every woman, shows off, posts too much, talks too much. On the surface, it seems like he's full of self-belief. But look deeper. That kind of behavior is not born from strength. It's born from fear. Fear of being invisible. Fear of being unimportant. Fear of not being enough. Now, compare him to someone else. A man who doesn't speak unless he has something meaningful to say. He doesn't fight for attention. He doesn't flatter. He doesn't chase. He simply is. Calm. Collected. Grounded. That is not arrogance. That is mastery. The bad boy many people talk about is not necessarily bad in morals, but in expression. He acts like he doesn't care, and oddly, that makes people care more. Why? Because detachment makes you mysterious. It creates a sense of value. But here's the secret. What people are really drawn to is not the detachment itself. They are drawn to someone who isn't emotionally shaken by things. They want someone who can hold stillness while others lose their minds. That stillness? That's Stoic fortitude. A Stoic does not react quickly. He pauses. He reflects. He measures. He understands that the only true power is power over the self. While the world scrambles to be seen, He becomes invisible to nonsense. While others fight to control situations, he controls how he responds. This isn't weakness, it's terrifying strength. The reason many are drawn to what looks like the bad boy is because he gives the illusion of emotional control. But Stoicism doesn't deal in illusion. It deals in truth. And truth always lasts longer than the mask of ego. True fortitude is built in silence. You don't need to show the world who you are. You just need to be who you are, even when the world isn't watching. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it." In a time where everyone is talking, the one who embodies strength speaks without saying a word. You see, women, and people in general, are not truly looking for someone who breaks rules or plays games. Deep down, they are searching for someone anchored, someone who can stay centered in chaos, someone who doesn't fall apart when things don't go their way, someone who doesn't need them to feel whole. Most people confuse attention with admiration. They believe if someone looks at them, compliments them, desires them, that it's a sign of value. But admiration is quieter. It's not shown in a like or a message. It's felt in how others feel safer in your presence. They trust your energy. They feel your composure. And that composure is earned, not performed. The loud confidence of many today is short-lived. It's dependent on reactions, on likes, on approval. But a Stoic builds confidence from within. He builds it from discipline, from clarity, from facing his own weaknesses in the dark and not running from them. When you're truly strong, you don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to prove anything. The world begins to recognize something deeper in you. It's like the sea. From the surface, it looks calm. But underneath, it runs deep, powerful, and unstoppable. Real confidence doesn't shout. It doesn't chase. It doesn't show off. Real confidence sits in silence and waits for the right moment. And even then, it doesn't rise for attention, but for purpose. People will always be drawn to mystery, to strength, to grounded energy. But it's not because they want someone dangerous or rebellious. It's because they want someone who cannot be emotionally controlled by life. And in a world of impulsiveness, the man who holds his emotions like a mountain holds the storm, still, unmoved, is rare. Seneca once wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." That is what builds inner power, not pretending to be strong, but becoming strong by going through the fire without burning others, and without burning yourself. False confidence needs a stage. Stoic fortitude needs only silence. False confidence wants to be seen. Stoic strength doesn't mind being overlooked. Why? Because it knows the truth. What is real doesn't need to chase recognition. It just needs to endure. When you stop needing attention, you start commanding it. Not with tricks, not with charm, but with presence. And that presence comes when you've done the inner work. When you've stopped reacting. When you've learned to hold your tongue. When you've taken the time to think, to reflect, to grow. In the end, it's not about being the loudest or the most charming. It's about being immovable, solid, deep. Women aren't attracted to chaos. They're attracted to the illusion of control. But when they meet someone who truly has it, someone who walks through fire without flinching, they know the difference. The question is, do you? From lust to respect. How to command attraction without performing. We've all seen it. The quick spark. The intense pull. The kind of attraction that feels powerful in the beginning but fades without warning. It's the kind of lust that burns fast but never lasts. That's the world most live in. A world where attraction is confused with noise. Where presence is mistaken for performance. And where men believe they must constantly prove themselves to win attention. But attention is cheap. Respect is earned. Let's speak clearly. You don't need to chase. You don't need to impress. You don't need to become someone you're not. In fact, the more you try to perform, the more you lose the very power that draws people in. A man who performs is a man who doubts. A man who is calm is a man who trusts himself. What most don't understand is this. Attraction that begins in lust will demand constant effort. You'll have to keep showing off. Keep being interesting. Keep pretending. And the moment you stop, the moment you rest, it fades. Why? Because it was never about your depth. It was about your decoration. And decoration doesn't last. But respect, that's different. Respect begins where lust ends. When a woman sees a man who doesn't need her approval, who speaks when he has something to say, not when he's afraid of being forgotten, something changes. She sees a man who doesn't need the room to clap. A man who can walk alone without feeling lost. That kind of man doesn't entertain. He anchors. The Stoics knew this deeply. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That means you don't play games to be liked. You don't adjust your truth to avoid discomfort. You don't fake your strength. You build it. Quietly. Every single day. There's something rare about a man who stays true to his principles, even when they cost him attention. Most people bend. They smile when they don't feel like smiling. They agree when they disagree. They flirt to be seen. But the Stoic stands still. He isn't cold. He's in control. He doesn't fear being misunderstood. He fears becoming what he's not. Here's what most men don't understand. Being respected is not the same as being liked. Liked is temporary. Liked means you're useful, entertaining, or easy to digest. But respect, that stays. Respect doesn't ask for constant proof. It simply recognizes truth. It recognizes discipline. It recognizes a man who knows who he is. And when a woman respects a man, something far more powerful than lust takes shape. She becomes still in his presence. Not because he dominates her with noise, but because he carries himself with order. She senses something rare. Something that doesn't need attention to survive. Something that doesn't tremble under pressure. This doesn't mean you become emotionless. It means you stop leaking your emotions everywhere. It means you learn to direct them inward, towards discipline, not destruction. A Stoic man feels deeply, but acts wisely. He doesn't explode in anger when something upsets him. He doesn't beg for love when it's missing. He simply stays rooted in what he can control, his thoughts, his choices, his path. There's a quiet power in that, the kind that doesn't burn fast, but burns forever. If you truly want to attract from a place of power, stop trying to be attractive. Become solid instead. Become the kind of man who doesn't need validation to feel worthy. The kind of man who doesn't need to be followed to walk with confidence. That doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop depending. It's easy to manipulate emotions, to play hard to get, to ghost people, to trigger attraction by being inconsistent. But those are games. They may work for a while, but they leave you empty. Because deep down, you know the attention you're getting isn't real. It's being forced. And what is forced never lasts. But when you build your life on calm, discipline, honesty, and reason, people don't just want to be near you. They trust you. They admire you. They know that when everything else falls apart, you won't. This is the shift from lust to respect, from shallow attraction to deep presence, from chasing attention to commanding space, from performing to simply being. And when you make that shift, you don't just become more attractive, you become unforgettable. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. That is not a depressing idea. That is liberation. Because when you live with that clarity, you stop wasting your time pretending. You stop begging to be seen. You simply live well. With virtue. With focus. With stillness. That is what women sense but can't always explain. It's not arrogance. It's not coldness. It's presence. And presence is magnetic when it's real. So the answer is simple, but not easy. Don't try to look strong. Be strong. Don't try to look wise. Be wise. Don't try to gain respect. Earn it. Quietly, consistently, without needing the world to clap. And when you do that, the kind of attraction you receive will be different. It won't fade. It won't need to be fed. Because it won't be built on performance. It will be built on who you truly are. And that is a kind of power no bad boy can fake.